Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Beyond Buttons, the Future of Control. My name is Tyler Small. I am a member of the technical specialist team here at PureLink. And today we wanted to go over not only the typical control options we see in the day-to-day professional AV world, but looking further than that. Today in particular, we're going to be taking you through why control is moving from visible buttons to invisible embedded systems and how PureLink is trying to shape that future into the world of Pro AV. But before we get into the specifics of today's topic, we just wanted to go over, for all those that potentially don't know about PureLink's background, a little bit of our story. So about over 2 decades ago, since 2002, our CEO, Minsu Park, spotted a flaw within the HDCP spec for commercial use. Rather than just accepting it as a status quo, he decided to become a part of the cutting edge of the technology. And since then, PureLink on its own has been always trying to be on the cutting edge of all specs that could be continuing to progress forward as opposed to just staying in their adapted ways. As you see here from our long timeline of innovation and inventions, starting with the first DVI to fiber cable back in 2002, and then progressed to larger scale matrix switchers, cross-platform digital modular matrix switching, proprietary UHD scaling, just to name a few. And then as we get closer into today's day and age, the first seamless presentation switcher, and then when 8K started getting added to DisplayPort and HDMI, we added that as well. And then, of course, in 2023, which we're going to talk a lot more about, was the launch of Icon Control and Automation, and then the USB-C and Dante solutions as well. Several different things, and PushGo, which some of you may have never heard of before. We will get into all of that as we continue through these slides. And then our brands. PureLink's diverse range of brands redefine excellence in the industry, and we have several different options here. The first one going left to right on the screen is Icon. As mentioned, we will go through our proprietary control software, which launched PushGo, which again, we will get into. But outside of that, what we were maybe known as more of our bread and butter, if you have heard of PureLink before, Media Access, PureStream, and Pure Media. So whether it's our AV over IP or point-to-point technology of cross-platform matrix switching, HD Tools is a lot of our solutions within your setups. So extenders, distribute DAs, stuff like that. And then Total Wire, which is our top of the line cable brand. We have over 400 clients in all different types of fields, smaller to larger scale, all different aspects in terms of professional AV. You can see from some of the listings here, a lot of different credible solutions through Citibank, the NFL, Capital One, the CIA, other aspects like that. A lot of different credibility and a lot of different aspects, whether it just be a professional conference room setting or the mission critical world in itself. But that is a little bit of PureLink's background. And to go into today's topic, I just wanted to start with an overview of control, or as we like to call it, the invisible backbone. Control, it used to be obvious. Big programmed panels and centralized logic. Now, much of automation is embedded into endpoints, displays, extenders, source, and power supplies. Control is becoming an invisible backbone that keeps the systems coherent as these technologies continue to advance. Where panels were hard-coded macros once used to be the behaviors, now the intelligence lies within the black boxes that you see throughout all different makes and models. That shift makes systems smarter in and out of the box, and it moves more complexly, and it allows for a lot more reliability. But how did we get to this point? And does it make the traditional sense of control any more or less important? And that's what we're going to kind of get into today. So just to go over this a little bit further, from traditional to embedded control. So traditional control is that dedicated program controller handle logic, scheduling, and device glue. Think of your touch panels, everything from the phones that you have next to you and the control aspects that are built into those, to that Pro AV world of your tabletop touch panels or wall touch panels or any other larger scale control aspects that just allow for several different things, several different products to be controlled all through one processor. But modern control, on the other end, has many endpoint devices now, including control features. So automation now lives inside displays, sources, extenders, and power supplies. The practical result of this is systems behave more intelligently out of the box, but complexity shifts to change the handshake reliability. Excuse me. So there are several different examples that we could talk about in terms of this invisible control and things that happen behind the scenes, not needing that programmer or control specialist, if you will. We're going to go into three in particular that we see not only a lot in PureLink, but a lot in the AV world. So the three examples we're going to go into first is HDMI Consumer Electronic Control, or CEC for short. This is the single wire control allowing devices to command each other and coordinate functions. The second would be hot plug detect or hot swap handling. That is the automatic link connection that is detection and safe for intersection of removal or protections. And the third being PoE, power negotiations or prioritizations, that we see in our network switchers. So that is when the network switchers decide the device power, enable, disable ports, and gracefully handle overloads, whether that be temperature specific or data specific. These three practical examples were necessary changes as the specs for all of their either video or data transport continue to grow, and the necessity of controlling them and not allowing some of these issues to come about because of more being asked from them has been a key to the invisible backbone, as we talk about. So to go a little bit further into them, this is very layman terms for any engineers that we are fortunate enough to have joining this call today. But for HDMI CEC, it is an HDMI layer command channel that enables cross-device commands such as power, input select, and volume control. The practical automations, so the single button room ready, source-driven display wake, and coordinated shutdowns across devices. So we see it a lot for display control, as you can picture, or as you've probably seen from even your televisions at home, and allowing some of the settings built through in them. It just gives it another way to not need that entire control project or control central processor to be sending the commands if you just want to do simple actions like turning your TV on and off or whatever display you're using. If it has it built in of the 19-pin HDMI cable, it will also allow the data to be sent over the same pins that are transmitting audio and video to control that display on its own. For PureLink's perspective, this is seen in several of our devices, including our matrix switchers, AV over IP encoders and decoders, and extenders. Second, as we talked about, was hot plug detect. So HDP for short. This is the hardware signal that tells a source a sink is present or absent to indicate EDID or HDCP negotiations. In the practical automations, the single button room ready source driven display wake or coordinated shutdown across devices. So there's another example, and this is a little bit is more specific to our Max 2 line, but it is also seen in other of our matrix switchers, presentation switchers, or extenders. But this just allows, as a little bit further, but a similar thought process to CEC, where the ports that are receiving signal via the cable will be able to either identify all the data that's being transmitted as soon as something's plugged in or unplugged, whether it's something as simple in your larger scale control project, like relaying if something is or isn't connected properly, or is or isn't transmitting the proper signals over that port. If it's not receiving anything at all, if the cable, it can allow you to realize where your issue may be occurring, or it'll just give you the specific details. So if you're connected to a display and you're trying to do that EDID emulation, which is just matching the size specifics required for that display, or the HDCP negotiations to make sure that your video is transmitting properly. These are all discussed bidirectionally, so back and forth, both sides communicating, and immediately, especially as the technology continues to advance. So it could be something as coordinated as the backbone of just as soon as you plug in your laptop, for example, the presentation switcher that you are connecting it to will establish that as the active source and do everything that is required to get that source to a display, or other more complicated things like matching several different EDID resolution rates and sizes that will allow for a more quality picture and not need all that back-end programming to be done. And the third is PoE power negotiations. So of the PoE standards, which is 802.3 AF, or PoE Plus, which is just a higher power, which enables negotiated power delivery and classification between the network switch and unit. So these practical automations are auto power cycle hung cameras, gate power during firmware updates, and priorities for critical devices during power budget constraints. So this is seen throughout all of the network switches we have in our line. There are several different reasons you would need this power negotiation, and just in our network switches, this is why we also offer all of the data information of how much is currently being pushed to your PoE devices to continue to power them on safely and properly. We utilize this for the practical automation as we've seen, but also in a more, a better example, I should say, of the Pro AV world would be in our encoders and decoders. So just allowing, depending on the size of how many switches you have together, how much video is being transported, the size of the jumbo frames pushing the video over your network will obviously impact how much or how little power draw is going to those devices. So just making sure everything stays in a regulated level and network is required for the safety of the video processing, and also just the safety of everything in your setup to make sure that you're not blowing up these devices, if you will. Now, as we continue here, we will go over the impact that this might have had on traditional control. So kind of doesn't really, you wouldn't think that it would cause issues, if you will, if you are not a programmer especially. Programmers probably know exactly why this would become an issue right away if not done properly, because the smarter you make anything, sometimes it makes it more complicated to actually deal with it because there's more hurdles to jump through. Simply put, beforehand, in the simple control days of just sending the ASCII value or hex value that was required for an input to change on a matrix switcher to get the feedback of something that's on your network or anything like that, if all it knew to do, or all it needed to do, was just receive that string and act in a accorded way once it receives it, it's as simple as that. But now that there's all these different back end logics built into the actual boxes themselves, sometimes there's more hurdles to jump through, or there could be at least. So, problem. With more capabilities inside the products being controlled, more programming is required to control these devices. Result, more invisible automation events to monitor, more failure modes to mitigate, and greater commissioning and support overhead. And the other aspect of it, I just kind of mentioned that, is the advancement of these boxes, whether they are through firmware, whether they are through updates to the products in themselves, they will require those changing controls. Typically, especially in the PureLink line, the APIs will not change or will change very slightly, only if some capabilities no longer are supported. However, you never know where it comes to how variables are treated within a project or what other headaches you may run into once the API or the capabilities of the product change. So we figured here at PureLink that there needed to be a solution for this, that there needed to be something that can allow the benefits of all these black boxes becoming smarter and put that into the control software as well, because potentially with control being built so early to make everything else easier, if everything becomes easier, why shouldn't the control software in itself be easier as well? So our solution was a control software that enhances the automation instead of circumnavigating it. A programming language that is quicker to write, easier to replicate, and pre-programmed by the manufacturer themselves. So if more code has to be made, if more commands have to be altered or added, why not make the actual code making process easier? And that was exactly what we thought back in 2023. And that's why we wanted to make sure that it was not only easier, but the easiest in the industry, if you will. We wanted to make sure it was perfected and that we were able to make it as easy as possible for anyone to become a programmer. And that launched the start of Icon, Control and Automation. Specifically in Icon Control and Automation, and this is what won us an award back at last year's InfoComm, it's Icon Easy Control. As you can see here in the picture, and we'll get into more of the specifics of it, it allows you to write these complex lines of code in plain English via mouse clicks, which is the easiest way that we could think that coding could be done. So, ending all the days of requiring the necessity of having this coding background, but also knowing these coding languages, and while still allowing you to code within those coding languages, giving you both options, basically. So as I just mentioned, the dual functionality of Easy Control. So on the top, for any of you that don't know, that is JavaScript, or Icon's proprietary JavaScript version, which is the same thing, just with our own set of shortcuts to those commands. So it still allows you to, within the software that we promote and have within all of our controllers, it allows you to still take your JavaScript projects and integrate them with our controller, or if you have years of experience in JavaScript and want to continue to use it, copy it, whatever you need to do, gives you that option. But for either the control programmers with years of experience that want to have the easier approach, or people that may have been intimidated by the control space and not wanting to jump into it, we have easy language. So both top and bottom are the same command, if you will, if you were looking at it. So it allows you to start by calling a device and setting the input source. For example, our PS610, which is a 6x1 presentation switcher. Just set it to input 1, change the variable, which allows us to know which input is currently the active one. It changes the status of buttons within the project. So this example, button 147 is input 1, so we want that to be active, while input 2, button 150, we want to have as normal, so it shows input 1 is active without looking at the PS610. And then it also allows for conditionals to be written in a much simpler way. So if you see the tag equals success, it'll show you to input change success. So that was one simple command that we tried just showing all the different versions of what would be possible within our easy language. But it could also just be as simple as that top line there. Set PS610 to input 1 without having to A, write anything down, because that's all via input, mouse clicks, and B, not having to know anything more than what you are just trying to get done on the end and not needing to know JavaScript. So for a more robust view of Icon Easy Control, it allows for easy project management. So as you can see here from this interface, as opposed to our easy language, this is a separate page on the Icon IDE that allows you to take devices that you have previously worked on, which is on the right side of that interface, and push it to the left to be able to add it to this specific project you're working on. And then all the information in the middle shows how you're connected to all your devices, what the device information is of everything. So the IP address, login information if you need it, subnet and gateway, and the user interface that you are taking all these products and pushing them to. It also allows for driver organization, which is organized on the right side and in a separate tab as well if you want to create your own drivers, or for all PureLink products. And for a growing library of third-party products, PureLink will build the drivers for you. There's also the quick view of drivers for those input-output connections, as I mentioned. You can auto scan for Icon devices on your network, so you don't have to know the IP address of it. As long as you're within the same subnet mask on the same network, you will be able to just scan it and instantly pair to it if it comes up in the scan. It has a diagnostic console, which is on the bottom there. So whether it's problems before you upload them to your touch panel because of just things that don't make sense logistically in the coding language, or if you have any issues based on not having a device or not having a device that will be able to communicate because of this reason, it will give you a full laydown and examples of how you can adjust your code or adjust your project. We have several different controller options as well. So the 4 that we have listed here, or 6, I should say, is our most popular, our Icon T10, which is a 10-inch tabletop touch panel with the built-in processor. Imagine an iPad, if you will, with a kickstand to be able to be powered via PoE and have any interface custom made for you by our PureLink team. We also have a wall version of both the 10-inch and 4-inch touch panel. And both of these touch panels are not only the user interface, but they are also the control processor. They are built into the back end while still operating at a low temperature to not cause any issues to the devices themselves. If you have a larger scale project in terms of the amount of ports required, so this is going a little bit further away from the smaller projects that might be controlled all via LAN. So our master control processor, the Icon C8, has 8 ports alongside Ethernet, of course, has 8 ports for RS-232, 422, or 485, 8 ports for IR, including IR learning, input output, and relay. And then the Icon E4, E1, if you want to still have your master control processor be the processor that's built into the 10-inch or 4-inch touch panel, you could have port expanders as well. So the E4 has 4 of those examples I just listed before. So whether it's COM, relay, IO, or IR, or the Icon E1 is our tinier, mostly utilized for IR emitter that will allow you to just have a T10 and one E1 to control a display or any other IR device while not needing several different ports for it. But very often, especially in our push-go packages, we see the requirement of having an E1 to expand it for IR control with your T10 controlling everything else. And basically, as I kind of just hinted at, but we work with all third-party equipment if it has control capabilities. So all the ones that are listed on this slide here. So via LAN, it offers 4 different protocols. So TCP, UDP, HTTP, or WebSocket. For COM, it has RS-232, 422, or 485. IR with IR learning, input output, and relay. And we offer our test drive program, which allows you to try out any PureLink products for 30 days. And this includes any custom programming or the controllers that you want to add to your project. So PureLink's team, if we were to start to connect with you, we would be able to talk and see what your setup is, what third-party equipment you would want controlled alongside, or even if it was just solely controlling non-PureLink equipment, we would just get in touch to try and obtain the API information for whatever devices they are, figure out the best control protocol we can set up for this, build a project for you, and you can have it for 30 days to be able to test it within your setup, see if it's to your liking. This is all possible because of that Icon Easy language. So the fact that it is so easy to build out these strings of code, to write them in plain English, to copy and paste between multiple projects or multiple pages, and cut down significantly on the programming time and cost, we are able to take in that cost for some of our bundles, while also just working with you to have it so that by the time for your test drive or just a PO in general, we would be able to have it plug and play as a controller, which is not something you normally see in the control and automation industry. That is just about all we have for you today. We want to thank you all for joining us today and hope that you can stay connected with us within our PureLink community. As you might have seen from this, whether it was via some of our social medias, or specifically, I want to highlight our YouTube if you have more questions or want to see more about our Icon control line. We are always adding more videos on our simple how-tos, just of the little things of how our IDE works, but also if you have more in-depth questions, I would be happy to get in touch with you, sit on a call with you, and show you how the interface works and how it could work for you. Of course, please contact us if you have any questions, sales@purelinkAV.com, or as I mentioned, I am Tyler, a part of the technical support team. So if you have any technical technical questions that you would like to ask me about Icon or any of the built-in backbone of the control and automation world in our other PureLink products, I'd be happy to talk to you. So contact us at support@purelinkAV.com as well. But I will stay on here in case there is any questions, but I thank you all for joining us today. Again, we have another webinar this November 6th at 2 p.m. That is the IKEA approach to meeting rooms. So if you do have any interest in push-go, as we've talked about in previous webinars, or as we will talk about in this upcoming one, of course, we can explain to you how our controller and how we have been able to take all of our products, combine them into one, and make it an IKEA-like approach to starting your own conference room and making it automated like in a professional setting. So stay tuned for that. Thank you again for joining us today, and I will stay on for a couple more minutes in case anyone has any questions, but thank you.